Hey everybody! So this video is going to provide a follow-up to the poem you had to read for the Week 2 discussion. If you remember, that poem was My Papa's Waltz by Theodore Redka. So I asked you in the discussion to see what you could figure out is actually happening in the poem, what's going on, and then using actual words and phrases or lines from the poem to show us why you think that that's what's going on. So I'm going to go through the poem and we're going to figure out what actually is going on and what we're supposed to make of it, right? So I'm going to read the poem again and then we're going to go stanza by stanza, which is each group of lines, and figure out what's happening in each little section, and that'll help us put everything together. So, My Papa's Waltz. The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy, but I hung on like death. Such waltzing was not easy. We romped until the pans slid from the kitchen shelf. My mother's countenance could not unfrown itself. The hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. At every step you missed, my right ear scraped the buckle. You beat time on my head with a palm caked hard by dirt, then waltzed me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt. Okay, let's look at the first stanza. And don't forget the title, My Papa's Waltz. Okay, and a waltz is a type of dance. Okay. The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy. So clearly, the person that's being spoken about, which is Papa, has been drinking quite a bit, and so much so that just being near him, like his breath, could make a small boy dizzy. But I hung on like death. Such waltzing was not easy. So the boy's hanging on very tightly because the waltzing, the dancing, is not easy, right? He's dancing with his dad. So that's what, they're very close. He can smell and feel dad's breath. A lot of alcohol. The boy's holding on real tight because they're dancing and it's not easy for a lot of reasons probably. We romped until the pans slid from the kitchen shelf. So if you think about what romping means, romping is very boisterous, playful fun, right? Toddlers go to romper rooms. They wear rompers, okay? This is very playful, hard, energetic fun. We romped until the pans slid from the kitchen shelves. They're playing so hard, and we know the playing is the dancing. They're knocking pans off the shelf. My mother's countenance could not unfrown itself. So your countenance is your facial expression. So mom's facial expression is frowning, and she cannot unfrown it. So she's not happy. The hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. So who's holding my wrist? The speaker's wrist? Papa. So one of Papa's knuckles is battered, bruised, right? At every step you missed, my right ear scraped a buckle. So we know Dad's been drinking, we know they're dancing, and Dad misses steps sometimes, loses his footing, kind of stumbles a little bit. Every time that happens, the speaker's ear scrapes Dad's belt buckle. So we can kind of imagine how old the speaker is at this time, right? He's just tall enough where that his head is at waist height to his dad. And every time Dad kind of stumbles, the little boy's ear scrapes the belt buckle. And you can kind of imagine, you know, how they're dancing. If he's little like that, he might even be standing on Dad's feet. But, you know, and every time Dad misses a step, the kid kind of misses a step too. But maybe not. Maybe he's not standing on Dad's feet and they're still just kind of dancing like normal. But every time Dad kind of stumbles, the kid's ear scrapes the belt buckle. You beat time on my head. So Do you know the timing of a waltz? So dad is keeping time, the timing of a waltz, by patting on the kid's head, right? And the palm, dad's palm, is caked hard by dirt. Then waltzed me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt. The kid's still hanging on as dad takes him off to bed. So what we have here is a little poem, little 16-line poem about a memory that the speaker has of dancing around the kitchen with his intoxicated father. That is literally what is happening, the action of the poem. If you thought something else was happening, don't feel bad. One common assumption about this poem is that the boy is being abused by his dad. And there are definitely words and images in the poem that would easily lead you down that road. The fact that we find out right away that dad is super drunk. You know, the whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy. So that sets us up with certain expectations. But I hung on like death. There's already like this image of death. I hung on like death, like I'm clinging for dear life. That could indicate an element of fear, possibly. We romped until the pan slid from the kitchen shelf. If you don't really pay attention to the word romped and what it typically is associated with, you might kind of skip right past that and focus on the fact that, you know, there's a lot of physical activity that's making the pans, you know, fall off the shelves. And then mom's facial expression, she cannot unfrown her mouth. She's really upset. Bird just flew into my window. Anyway, the hand that held my wrist. So there's even something about that idea of being grabbed by the wrist that could make you think of some sort of negative physical struggle. Was battered on one knuckle. You know, even just the word battered brings up ideas of like a battered wife, right? Every step you missed, my right ear scraped a buckle. So a belt buckle, right? You know, kids getting disciplined with the belt buckle, his ear getting scraped by the belt buckle. You beat time on my head, right? There are some words that have some very dark negative associations with them that are used in this poem. Okay? So if it made you think that the whole thing was actually about this little boy being abused by his drunk dad, don't feel like you were totally wrong about it. However, if you go through line by line, like I did at the beginning, you see that despite all of those images and associations, that's not actually what's happening. What's actually happening is something that this boy found very fun. You know, he's clinging to his dad. You know, we romped. Romping and playing is fun, right? So the association that the boy had with this moment is very positive. So if it was a very positive experience for him as a boy, why now, as a man, writing about it or speaking about it, why is the speaker now adding in all of those other elements that give it a negative connotation? The connotation is like association. So it's not that you're wrong for thinking that it's about a dad abusing the boy. It's just that that's only part of it, because that's not really the abuse that's happening. as a boy, it was a very fun moment. Now that he's older, looking back on it, it's not so positive anymore. So how did he go from this young boy who was enjoying these moments with his dad to an adult who now looks back on those moments and it's not so positive anymore? Well, I think there's an element of truth to that assumption about abuse. But the wording and the images and our own personal experiences and what we're used to reading and hearing about, in real life and in the media, when we think of abuse, and especially with some of the words that are used, we jumped immediately to physical abuse, and that these bad things are happening to the boy. But I don't think that's, based on what's literally being described, the boy doesn't seem to be getting abused at all. And I don't think there's any evidence to say that the mom was either. The only time we hear anything about the mom is when they're playing so hard and dancing so hard that the pans are sliding from the kitchen shelves, and she's not happy about that. That's all we get about the mom. So to make the jump then to say, well, if it's not the boy that's being physically abused, then it must be the mom who is being physically abused. There's not enough evidence in the poem to support that. So the evidence actually supports the boy being abused more until we go through line by line, and then you're like, oh no, okay, he's not being abused, they're dancing, he thinks this is fun. But why would he put those ideas in our head if that's not what's actually happening? Because the boy did think it was fun. As a grown man, looking back on it, not so much. The abuse that's happening is actually all contained within the father. If he's drinking so much that his breath could make a small boy dizzy, he probably has a drinking problem. So there's a different kind of abuse that's happening that perhaps he did not see or understand when he was a young boy. And now that he is older, looking back on it, he has come to understand what was really happening. And I don't know if any of you have ever known someone, had someone in your life when you were a kid who had a drinking problem or maybe a drug problem. And when you were younger, they were everything. They would light up your world. They were so much fun. They gave you attention. They played with you. And you had no idea at the time that they were completely wasted. And then once you get to a certain age and, someone in your family is like, Uncle Jimmy was drunk all those times. And you're like, what? And it changes your whole perspective of those moments, those memories. And that's where the contradiction is coming from. Because what he describes to us is very fun, and in his eyes, very innocent. As an older person now, looking back on this memory, he infuses it with these other images and associations that clue us into how this very fun, positive memory is now tainted with some of these more negative aspects. So it's a reflection. He's reflecting on these moments and how he once felt about them compared to how he now feels about them, now that he's older, knows more, has experienced more, is wiser, right? So a very excellent example of why you need to really read closely. Think about the simple structure of the poem first. Just literally, and kind of like what I did in the beginning, I almost paraphrased each line, kind of put it in my own words, right? And then look at what that paraphrase reveals. Because when you paraphrase this, when you look at literally what's being said, it gives us an entirely different picture, right? It's fun. It's a good memory. Then you take that and say, okay, this is what's actually happening. Now let's look at the language that's being used in each line. And how do those work together? And that will lead you to what the author is trying to present to you. If you have any questions or really want to talk to me further about anything dealing with the poem, let me know. Otherwise, you can go ahead and complete